Welcome to a slow, beginner-friendly lesson on working with JSON from AP is made for absolute beginners. The data reading chapter begins. Last lesson you fetched your first real data with requests.get and turned it into a Python dictionary with response.json. Today we go deeper into that dictionary. Real API responses are rarely flat, they are nested, with dictionaries inside dictionaries, lists inside dictionaries, values buried several layers down. Your job is to reach in and pull out exactly the fields you care about. The good news, you already learned everything you need in the collections lessons. Dictionaries, lists, square bracket access, for loops. Today you apply those tools to real data coming back from real servers. From fetch to navigate, recap where you are. You can call requests.get with a URL and get a response object. You can check the status code to confirm the call worked. You can call response.json to turn the raw text into a Python dictionary. What you sometimes do not yet know is how to reach deep into that dictionary when the data is nested, when the value you want is buried inside a list, inside another dictionary, inside the top-level response. That is what today is about. Every tool you need is one you already learned. We are just pointing them at real data. Collections, applied live. What comes back from an API is not a web page. It is a map, keys pointing to values, sometimes nested deep. You already know how to read maps. You learned it with dictionaries. The response is a map. Quick recap of how JSON maps onto Python. A JSON object, curly braces with keys and values, becomes a Python dictionary. A JSON array, square brackets with items, becomes a Python list. A JSON string becomes a Python string. A JSON number becomes an int or a float depending on whether it has a decimal point. A JSON true or false becomes a Python boolean. When you call response.json, the entire body turns into Python data using exactly these mappings. Nothing new, just the collections you already know, wearing slightly different braces. Familiar shapes, different braces. Here is the transformation in code. Response.text gives you the raw JSON as a string, curly braces, quotes, commas, all as text. One call to response.json parses that text and returns a real Python dictionary. The type confirms it, class dict. From there, you access fields the same way you always have, data square brackets name gives ADA. The text version was just a string. The parsed version is a dictionary you can index. Always call .json when the server sent JSON, never try to parse the text by hand. One method, real data. Here is how you navigate a response. You start with response.json, which gives you the top-level Python object, usually a dictionary. You read one key at a time with square brackets. If the value is another dictionary, you read a key on that. If the value is a list, you index it by position or loop over it. You never try to understand the whole structure at once, you just go one layer deeper, one key at a time, until you reach the value you want. Patience and square brackets. That is the whole skill. One key at a time. Nested data feels overwhelming until you realize, you never climb it all at once. You go one key at a time, one layer deeper, until you reach the value you want. One layer deeper. Start with simple access. When the response is a flat dictionary, you read top-level keys directly with square brackets. Data square brackets name gives Python. Data square brackets stargazers _ count gives 64,000. But if you ask for a key that does not exist, like data square brackets open, Python raises key error. Keys must match exactly, including underscores and capitalization. When you get a key error, it means the key is not in the dictionary. Print the keys with data.keys to see what is actually available, and try again with the correct name. Top-level keys. Many APIs wrap their data inside an outer dictionary. Here the top level has two keys, meta and user. Data square brackets user returns the inner dictionary, name and city. To reach a value inside it, you chain square brackets, data square brackets user square brackets name gives ADA. Read it left to right, first get the user dict, then get the name from that dict. The same pattern reaches meta total. Data square brackets meta square brackets total gives 42. Each pair of brackets peels one layer. Chain as many as you need. Chain the brackets. Here is a real example from the GitHub API. The top-level dictionary has a key owner whose value is another dictionary with login and HTML_URL. It also has a key license whose value is a dictionary with key and name. To reach the owner's login, you chain data square brackets owner square brackets login gives Python. To reach the license name, data square brackets license square brackets name gives Python license 2.0. 2 layers deep in both cases. The skill is just following the path, one key at a time, reading left to right. Follow the path. Most API responses include a list of items, 10 articles, 50 users, 100 products. The same loop you wrote for lists now reads live data from across the internet. Lists of items. Many API responses include a list of items under a key like results or items. That JSON array becomes a Python list. Data square brackets results gives you the whole list. Data square brackets results square brackets 0 gives you the first item, a dictionary with name and age. Data square brackets results square brackets 0 square brackets name gives ADA. Notice the pattern, square brackets with a string key for dictionaries, square brackets with an integer for lists. You alternate between the two as you descend through the structure. Arrays become lists. When you have a list of items, the natural move is to loop over it. For item in data square brackets results, exactly the for loop you learned in the collections lessons. Inside the loop, each item is a dictionary, so you read its fields with square brackets, item square brackets name, item square brackets age. 3 lines of output, 1 per person. This is the bridge between fetching and using. The data came from across the internet, but once it is parsed, your existing Python skills take over completely. The same for loop. A common task is to pull one field out of every item in a list. A list comprehension does this cleanly. Names equals item square brackets name for item in data square brackets results. That gives you a list of just the names, Ada, Grace, Linus. The same pattern gives you just the ages. Once you have a list of numbers, you can sum them, count them, average them, all with the tools you already know. The API gave you the data, your existing Python skills turn it into answers. Pull one field from many. Notice how everything today connects back to the collections lessons. You access dictionary values by key with square brackets, exactly as you did in the dictionaries lessons. You access list items by index with square brackets, and loop over them with for, exactly as you did in the lists and loops lessons. You chain square brackets to descend through nested structures. List comprehensions work the same way they always have. The only new thing is where the data came from. Once it is parsed, it is just Python data, and your existing skills take over. Old skills, new data. Here is a practical example. Fetch a GitHub user profile and display its fields. You call requests.get on the user's endpoint with a login name. You check the status code. If it is 200, you parse the JSON and print the fields you care about: login, name, company, followers, following. Each field is a top-level key in the response dictionary, so simple square bracket access is enough. 20 lines end to end, and you have a real tool that reads live data from a real API. Run it with uv run -- with requests python profile.py. 20 lines, real tool. When you print fields, f strings make the output clean and readable. F string login : user square brackets login. The curly braces pull the value straight into the string. Notice the last line uses .get with a default for the bio field. Some users have a bio, some do not. .get returns the string no bio in parentheses when the field is missing, instead of raising key error. That is the safe access pattern from the collections lessons, doing real work on real API data. F strings and defaults. A few mistakes trip up every beginner. First, forgetting to call .json and trying to index the raw text, that gives confusing errors because text does not support key lookup. Second, using the wrong key name. If you get key error, print data.keys to see what is actually there. Third, assuming a field always exists, real APIs sometimes omit optional fields, so use .get with a default when you are unsure. Fourth, confusing list indexes and dict keys. Lists take integers, dictionaries take strings. If Python complains about the type of your brackets, check whether you are holding a list or a dict. Watch for these. When a field might be missing, use .get instead of square brackets. User.get bio returns none if bio is absent, instead of raising key error. User.get bio with the default string no bio returns that default instead. For nested access, you can chain .get calls or use the OR trick to fill in defaults. The rule of thumb: use direct square brackets when the API guarantees the field is present, like login on a user profile, and use .get when the field is optional, like bio or company. Safe access keeps your script running even when the data is incomplete. Get with a default. Quick self-check. Can you turn a response into Python data with response.json? Can you read a nested value by chaining square brackets, dict key, then list index? Can you loop over an array of items and print one field from each? Can you use .get to safely read a field that might be missing? If any of these feels shaky, re-watch the matching code and try it yourself. The shapes are small, and they repeat in almost every API script you will ever write. Say each out loud. Here is the whole skill in one breath. Response.json turns the raw text into Python data, usually a dictionary, sometimes a list. You navigate that data by chaining square brackets, a string key for each dictionary, an integer index for each list. You read arrays of items with the same for loop you learned in the collections lessons. You protect yourself from missing keys with .get and a default value. That is reading API responses. The fetching was new, the reading is just the collections skills you already own. The whole skill, in one breath. Now that you can fetch and read API data, the next lessons open up the wider world. You will call real public APIs, weather, books, country data, and build small scripts that answer real questions. You will learn to pass query string parameters to refine your GET requests, and to send headers for authentication when an API requires a key. After that, you will learn POST and PUT, sending data back to create and update resources. The network chapter is just beginning, and you already have the core skills to read what comes back. The network chapter widens. Here is a short practice to make it stick. Fetch the GitHub profile for the user Torvalds, Linus Torvalds, creator of Linux. Check that the status code is 200. Print the name and the followers count using direct square bracket access, those fields are guaranteed. Print the bio using .get with a default, because some users do not have one. Print the public repos count. Try it before moving on. When you can fetch, check, parse, navigate, and print, all from memory, you own the core skill of reading API data in Python. Try it yourself. Thanks for learning to read API data. The network chapter continues in the next lesson. The data reading chapter begins.